All right. So this evening we'll be talking about this year's Sodexo Stop Hunger Foundation Youth Grant. This is one of our longest running grants, and we're excited to once again be partnering with the Sodexo Stop Hunger Foundation. And you as youth changemakers who are passionate about ending childhood hunger in your local communities. So what are we going to be chatting about this evening? So I'll do a quick introduction, talk about some program requirements and project examples. We'll do a walkthrough of the application before looking at some do's and don'ts, things to keep in mind as you are putting together your application and before you hit that submit button. And then lastly, before we do any ending questions, we will talk about some project planning resources that can be of assistance while you are working on your proposal. All right, so let's jump into the program requirements. We want to make sure that you have everything that you need before starting the application. We know sometimes the applications do take some time, so we want to make sure that you have everything you need before you get started. All right, so first and foremost, because this typically is a question for every single grant opportunity that we offer, for the Sodexo Stop Hunger Grant, youth applicants must live in the United States. This is a condition of our funder, and this can be the continental US or any of the US territories, including Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa. All of your activities must benefit children and families in the United States, and projects also should be taking place within the US. Of course, because this is a hunger-focused program and a hunger-focused grant, all projects should be youth-led, and they should focus on ending childhood hunger. Please note that I mentioned community service or fundraising projects. I'll get into that a little bit later, but we are kind of dividing the project types into two different categories. So at YSA, we talk about leading ASAP, both leading as soon as possible now, but also ASAP being representative of 4 types of volunteerism strategies: awareness, service, advocacy, and philanthropy. So for fundraising, that's going to kind of fall slightly separately because of how the grant is set up. But again, we'll go into that as we look through the application itself. As for the timeline, we are looking at projects taking place during Youth Service Month, which is April 14th to May 14th of 2023. And Global Youth Service Day 2023 is April 20th to 30th. While GYSD is not required, we highly encourage some portion of your project to take place on that day, whether it is a kickoff, whether it is the project itself, or whether it is some type of celebration or reflection of all of the work that you and your volunteers had put into place. So we have the when, the where. Projects can take place in schools, universities, and colleges, after-school programs, youth organizations, nonprofits, or faith-based organizations. They can take place after school or outside of the traditional classroom as well. And then, of course, because we really want to make sure that youth service is at the center of the work that we're all doing. We know that youth service isn't specific to one type of person. We really want all of our youth applicants to engage youth who are considered not typically asked to serve as volunteers. So youth not traditionally asked to serve might include youth with disabilities, youth from low-income families, youth who are in the juvenile justice system, youth who are considered to be minorities in your community. So all of those demographics can be considered youth who are not traditionally asked to serve. Okay, some of the other requirements. If you are selected as a grantee, we will ask you to sign a grant agreement, which will go through all of the reporting requirements, information about any mandatory trainings, communications about how we are going to ask you to share your story, and information on how you are able to spend your awarded funds. With respect to reporting, all of our grantees will be required to submit at least 2 reports, one of which will be before your event, essentially telling us what's going to take place, where's it going to take place, when's it going to take place. And then the other is after your project, letting us know all of the things that you and your volunteers were able to accomplish, the impact that it had on the community, and a little bit about the people who carried out the project. Now, some of you might have learned about this opportunity through one of the organizations that is currently one of YSA's grantees through our lead agency program, our youth service zone program, or one of our other school and organization grants. Now, that's quite all right. We know that you as youth will be required to select an organization to serve as your sponsor. If your sponsor is one of those grantees, that's completely acceptable. We'll just ask that your project through the Sodexo grant is fully independent of any other awarded grant that the organization or school does have. And then we just want to make sure that you have your application in on time. So we will close so your application must be submitted by 11:59 p.m. your local time on Monday, January 16th. So if you're here in Washington, D.C. like me, it'll be 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. If you are out in California, it'll still be 11:59 p.m., but it'll be 11:59 Pacific time. And again, please make sure that your application is in by that time because this is such a competitive program, we will not be able to accept any applications after that. Okay, so let's talk about the fun stuff a little bit. What are some projects that are possible through this grant? So we look at both short-term and long-term solutions to childhood hunger. So when we break it down, some of the short-term solutions that we've seen as service projects include recovering and donating surplus or leftover food. Some of you might be familiar with the term gleaning, where you go to a farm or some type of farmstead, orchard maybe, and you collect food that couldn't be sold or donated otherwise. Maybe you will prepare and serve meals. This can be done in connection to a food bank or some type of, we've seen it done in connection with campus food services. Maybe you'll organize a food drive. We've seen food drives of all different types, where anything from can structure contests, where youth are building these massive structures using the food that they've collected, to end of the year on campus kitchen cleanouts, where you are working with peers on a college campus to collect any food that might be left behind at the end of the school year. Starting a backpack meal program is another very common project. And one thing we really encourage you to think about if you go this route is how can this be a project? How can this be a meal program that's sustained? So it's not just a one-off. And lastly, raising and donating money. As we think about some of the long-term solutions, probably one of the most common projects that we see is building a community garden. One thing we really encourage you to keep in mind is the area that you live in. We know that some areas in the spring are more conducive to planting than others. I'm from Buffalo, and last year we had snow in May. So one of those things to keep in mind if you are building a community garden, think in depth about what your timeline is going to look like. The other long-term solutions include hosting a healthy and budget-friendly cooking class. We know that if you teach people the skills, they're able to continue those skills and pass those same skills on to others. We can also do things along the lines of teaching people about government assistance programs, programs like SNAP and WIC, and thinking about how people can apply for those programs, how people can use the assistance of those programs to be able to sustain their families for a month, as it's typically a month by month assistance program. We can also, while this program is specifically focused on hunger, a long-term solution to that is also thinking about what support can we provide people who are experiencing hunger, but they might also be experiencing something in addition to hunger, like poverty or homelessness. So how can we assist food pantries to offer things that are not just food? And then lastly, looking at kind of that advocacy track. How can we contact elected officials and talk with them about making lasting change that focuses on ending hunger? Okay, so I want to put a couple of questions to you. All right, so the first of these questions is about the types of solutions to hunger. So I want to know, are you most interested in creating a project that A, makes an impact in the short term, makes an impact in the long term, or maybe you're not sure yet? So I just dropped this poll, so feel free to drop in where you stand at this moment. All right, we'll take about another 30 seconds, and then we'll go ahead and close the poll. Okay. So it looks like about a third of you are interested in projects that make an impact over the long term. About half of you are not sure yet. And the remaining participants are interested in projects that make an impact in the short term. So that's all great. We know that hunger is not something that can be solved overnight, but we do need immediate solutions to help people now. Okay, so let's jump into this second poll question. This is thinking about those different project examples that I shared with you. So what project example are you most interested in? Now, just keep in mind, these are not the only types of projects that you as young people can lead when it comes to ending childhood hunger in your community. So again, let's hear what you think. Which project example are you most interested in? Okay, we'll give it about another 15 seconds to wrap up. All right, great. Thank you, everyone. So let's see what these results look like. The most common answer, the most common project that seemed to inspire people is organizing a food drive. That's followed by starting a backpack meal program and helping food pantries offer more than food. And then behind those options, we have teaching people about government assistance programs and preparing and serving meals. That is wonderful. So you will see these examples come up again as we jump into the application itself. But before we do that, I do want to briefly show you this map. These are where our 2022 Sodexo Stop Hunger grantees hosted projects. So hopefully we'll see you on this map when it comes to talking about our 2023 grantees. Okay, so let's jump into the application itself. Two things to note. If you have not yet signed up to access this year's application, you can do that at ysa.org/Sodexo. I'm going to go ahead and drop that into the chat just so that you have it. Okay. And if you have signed up or you've started your application, you should have received a confirmation email with the instructions on how to access your application. If for some reason you're unable to access it, please go ahead and email me. I will also drop my email into the chat. Okay. And at any point in the application process, I am going to be your contact person. I'm excited to be running this Sodexo Stop Hunger program for, I believe, the 3rd year now. It's an issue that I am very passionate about. My master's thesis was actually about childhood hunger and what are some of the causes behind it. So being able to work with young people and learn about hunger in your communities and the work that you're doing to solve this issue, for me is incredibly meaningful. Okay, so let's jump into the application. Let me go ahead and switch screens. Okay. So this is a little bit of a lengthy application. So one thing I do want to highlight, if for some reason you aren't able to finish the application in one go, that's totally all right. We do have this button up here that allows you to save your progress and resume later. It will ask you to submit your email and create a password. Make sure that you click on the save button and that you receive a confirmation that the form had saved, because we don't want you to in some way, shape, or form accidentally lose all of the hard work that you put into this. And then you would also resume a previously saved form. You would again enter your email and the password that you created, and you will be able to access the form that you'd saved. If you save it and for some reason you can't find the password that you set up, let me know. I can always reset it for you. Okay. And again, the application will not automatically save. One of the strategies that some applicants have done in the past is they've had the application open as well as a Word document and have typed in their responses in the Word document, then done a copy and paste over before submitting. So that is one other option if you don't think that you would be able to submit this all at once. Okay, so jumping in, of course, we'll ask for some contact information. Please note that if the young person that's leading the project is under the age of 18, we will also ask for contact information of their parent and or guardian. We'll also ask you to select a mentor, an adult mentor who will support you in completing your project. This can be a teacher, a parent, a coach that is going to be working with whichever school or organization that's going to be serving as your sponsor. Okay, you are going to be the person that is in charge, but your mentor should serve as a guide or someone to check in with, just to make sure that you have everything that you need. Okay. And your sponsoring organization, the main role that they will be playing is to accept the grant funds for you and then work with you to purchase any items that you might need for your project. We are unable to send grant funds to an individual, so please keep that in mind. If for some reason the organization that is initially set to be your sponsor is no longer able to serve as your sponsor, let me know. We've had grantees in that situation in the past, and we're able to work with you to coordinate a new sponsoring organization. All right, so let's talk about your project. First and foremost, we'll ask you to come up with a fun project and let us know about the type of project that you're organizing. So this should look a little familiar. Looking at projects that make an impact in the short term, as well as projects that make an impact in the long term. Like I mentioned, you might want to do something a little different than any of these projects. So we do have an option to do an other type of project. Just tell us about the project type that you are planning to organize. Okay. For the purpose of this, we know a lot of people said organizing a food drive, so we'll go ahead and pick that option. All right. So if you have applied for Sodexo Stop Hunger grant in the past, we've typically had one amount available. This year, one of the things that we wanted to do was change that up a little bit. And so we have two different grant amounts connected to the number of volunteers that you're able to engage. So we have a $250 grant for projects that are able to engage at least 25 youth ages 5 to 25 as volunteers, and a $500 grant for a 50 youth volunteer requirement. Now remember, I'm saying youth volunteer requirement. You're welcome to, and we encourage you to have youth who are benefiting from your project, but the volunteers that count towards your total must be youth. If adults want to jump in and support your project as well, that's great. But again, we really want to make sure that youth are at the forefront as change makers. And youth who are volunteers can be volunteers who are helping you plan your project. They can be youth who are leaders in carrying out your project, or they can be volunteers who are just able to join you on the day of your project. So, we really want you to think about how you can be involved as planners, as leaders, and as volunteers day of. Okay, so we'll go ahead and select the $500 grant. So here's where we get into the nitty gritty. First of all, let us know why your project is needed in your community. Think about what facts and figures and statements are available. It helps if you look at if there are hunger organizations in your state or in your community, really look at those. Especially when we talk about why your project is needed. If the data that you are presenting is as close to the community that you're serving as possible, that's much more helpful than if you are providing numbers that apply nationwide. One thing to think about. And then we know that projects are most impactful when they are addressing an issue that you care about. So we want to know why childhood hunger is particularly important to you. If there are groups that you're working with on your project, whether it be leaders in the hunger field, a group of individuals, a food bank or a food recovery network, let us know about that and how you're working with them. And then here's where we really need the meat of things. So we're going to ask you to describe your project. Tell us who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how of your project. Kind of what is going to take place, when's it going to take place, who is going to be a volunteer, and what are they going to do? So because we selected the option of doing a food drive, we're going to ask you to come up with a goal. In this case, how many food items do you hope to collect? If you're doing a community garden, how many pounds of food do you hope to grow and donate? Across the board, we want to know how many volunteers you think you can recruit to support your project. Just keep in mind that minimum volunteer requirement. And so let us know about your recruitment plan as well. Are you going to do more peer-to-peer work? Are you going to do outreach over social media? Do you have a service club at your school that you're going to involve in your project? And then also let us know, because this grant is sponsored by the Sodexo Stop Hunger Foundation, if you have any Sodexo employees that are going to be involved with your project. If you have a particular individual, that's great. If you have some Sodexo presence in your community, but you haven't done any outreach to them yet, that's okay. Let us know that as well. I will say the easiest way to find Sodexo employees in your community is to do a simple Google search using quotations around Sodexo plus your city's name. Okay, so let's jump into when your project will take place. Let us know the timing of your project, including the preparation and planning stages, as well as the reflection and celebration. Like I mentioned at the beginning, projects can take place anytime during Youth Service Month, April 14th to May 14th, 2023. It can all your activities can take place on one day, or they can be spread out. And then again, we encourage and highly recommend some type of activity to take place on GYSD. And then obviously we talked about both short-term and long-term solutions. So how can your idea be sustained and continue to help even after your project is done? If you are using the grant funds to start or expand a project, what are your plans to raise money to continue that? Okay, and then thinking about impact, how are you going to track and measure the change that your project makes? So if we're doing a food drive, how are you going to measure how much food is collected? And let us know about, if it's something along the lines of number of meals donated. We have a couple of handy dandy numbers in here to make that process a little simpler. Let us know how many people you think you will help through your project. That can be people who are helped directly and people who are helped indirectly. So people that you are directly working with, so people who are going to be receiving food or items or information from you. And then those who are helped by the people that you are helping. So if you are teaching a cooking class, the people that you teach are going to be directly benefiting. but then the people that they help, maybe their families, are the people that will be helped indirectly. And then just let us know how you came up with that number. Just kind of as a way to start thinking about the impact that your project will have. Of course, we want to make sure that we are recognizing and thanking our volunteers. A lot of work goes into these service projects. So let us know how you're going to recognize your volunteers, and let us know how you're going to share the impact of your project. We really encourage you to think about how you're going to share the project with members of the media, as well as elected officials in the community. Okay, so before we get into the budget, I do want to backtrack a little bit because I mentioned earlier that we have our general service projects, but then we also have fundraising projects. And those are just a little bit different. Okay, so again, a lot of the questions are going to be very similar. So when we had asked about your project plans, the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, the how. Instead, for fundraising projects, we're going to ask you what your fundraising plans are. How will you raise the funds? What audiences will you target? How will you reach out to them with a compelling message? Let us know about what organization you are fundraising for, and why you selected that organization. We also want to know how much money you hope to raise and donate. Okay, so important thing to note. If you are doing a project other than a fundraising project, you will receive a grant of either $250 or $500 that may be used towards completing your project. If you are doing a fundraising project, 20% of your budget, so if it's a $250 grant, it would be $50. And for a $500 grant, it would be $100. 20% may go towards, up to 20% may go towards planning expenses. The other 80%, so either $200 or $400, is to be considered as match donation for whatever funds you are raising during your project. So if you are doing a fundraising project and you select the 250 grant amount, $50 of that will go towards project expenses and planning expenses, and $200 will be considered to be a match. So we encourage you to raise at least $200, and then you get an additional $200 to donate to the organization that you are fundraising for. Okay, wanted to particularly mention that before we get into talking about your budget. So this is really important because we want to know how you plan to spend the funds and how you are going to be good stewards of the money that is provided by the Sodexo Stop Hunger Foundation. So things that we are able to fund include recognition items, things like t-shirts or certificates or plaques. Snacks and refreshments for volunteers are also allowed, but they should not cost more than $100 or $200, depending on the size of the grant that you're awarded. So other things that we're able to fund include things that you need to complete your service project. These may be art supplies. If you're doing a community garden, maybe you need to purchase seeds or mulch. If you're doing a meal packing program, maybe you need baskets to transport meals. We also can fund things like local transportation for youth doing service. We know sometimes transportation is a barrier to participation, and we really want to make sure that youth of all backgrounds are able to participate in your service projects. And then lastly, things like postage, copying, and printing that directly relate to your project. So if you are printing out flyers to advertise your event, that can be covered through this grant. Things that we cannot fund. So we're actually going to go from the bottom to the top on this one. So we cannot fund long range expenses that are not directly related to your project. We cannot fund daily operations for ongoing programs. We cannot fund anything that you call miscellaneous expenses, but don't give us more information about. We cannot fund direct payments to people, like hiring a DJ or paying someone to come and speak or attend your event. We cannot fund expensive equipment that will only be used once, like a GPS. If it is an expensive piece of equipment, but will be used many times in the future as your project continues, explain that to us when you include that item in your budget. And then the last item that we cannot fund would be food or supplies that will be directly donated to project recipients. So like if you're doing a food drive, you are unable to use your grant funds to purchase canned food that will then be donated. If you are doing something like a cooking class or starting a backpack meal program, you are able to purchase food or supplies that will be used to create meals that will be served at a shelter or supplement a meal packing event. Okay, I know that's a lot, but if at any point in time you have questions about any piece of the application, please let me know. And then of course, we will ask how you will spend the grant funding. Let us know what you're going to purchase, how many of each item that you're planning on purchasing, the total cost of that item. Your total budget should equal the amount that you requested. So if you are requesting a $250 grant to engage 25 youth as volunteers, your total budget should equal $250. Same thing for the $500 grant for 50 youth volunteers, your total budget should equal $500. Okay, and once you hit submit, you will see a confirmation on your screen. Just please kind of keep an eye out for that to make sure that your application has gone through. Okay, so I am going to pause because I know we've covered a lot so far, and I did see a couple of questions in the chat. Okay, so Charisma did have a question about the sponsoring organization. So if you are the organization that is putting the project together, there's no matter what, everyone needs to have a sponsoring organization. So if one of YSA's youth leaders is coming up with a project idea, YSA can serve as their sponsor. If you are, trying to think of one of our current grantees. If you are Norda Vista High School and one of your students is leading a project, and they are a student at Norda Vista High School, or it's Norda Vista Honor Society, and the student is part of Norda Vista Honor Society, that's fine. Norda Vista Honor Society or Norda Vista High School can serve as the young person's sponsoring organization. Please note, it should be a young person who is coming up and leading this project. This is not a grant for organizations or schools, so please keep that in mind as you are working with your youth to complete this application. Okay, any other questions at this point? Okay, so a young person is supposed to be completing this application. Yes, this is specifically a grant for young people. Our organization grants typically open in the spring. Our youth grants typically open in the fall. So this is one of our youth grants. Also, our organization grants are typically larger capacity and larger capacity in the sense of more funding and a larger volunteer requirement. Okay, great. So let's hop into some do's and don'ts of the application. This is based off of 10 plus years of Sodexo grantee application, as well as a little over 30 years of applications for our other grant programs. But again, specifically tailored to this program. All right. So some things to keep in mind as you are working on an application for this program. First and foremost, make sure your project idea fits all of the grant requirements. Again, we know completing grant applications does take time, and we don't want you to put together a really wonderful application, but then realize that the project that you're proposing doesn't fulfill the grant requirements. We want you to propose a project that is youth designed and youth led. Let us know why the project is needed in your community. This is a really key piece because we've seen applications where it's a relatively strong application, but there's not much community need, versus an application that may not be as strong, but the community need is very high. So if we're down to the two, that is one of the areas that we do focus on, is community need. Please make sure that you are paying attention to the minimum youth volunteer requirements for the grant amount that you select. For $250, it's a 25 youth volunteer requirement. For the $500 grant, it is a 50 youth volunteer requirement. And again, those volunteers can be volunteering with planning and organizing the project. They can be serving as leaders during the project, or they can be serving as volunteers on the day. So it doesn't necessarily just need to be volunteering at one point. There are other pieces that we really encourage you to take into consideration. Let's see what's next. Make sure that you're providing a clear idea about what you and your volunteers will be doing. The more clear you are, the better picture and idea of your project that the reviewers will be able to get, and really have a great understanding of the change that you're looking to bring to your community. Make sure to review project planning resources while you're completing your application. We do have a number of them available. As you saw, as we were going through the application, there are videos embedded in the application for each of the different parts. So feel free to view those, and I'll be sharing a few more planning resources with you in just a few minutes. And then lastly, reach out if you have any questions. I am happy to go through and talk about any component. I cannot advise on this is the type of project you should do, but if you have kind of overall questions, I can definitely answer those for you. Okay, so those are the do's. Let's touch on the don'ts. Things that you want to kind of veer away from as you're working on your application. So don't propose a project that's adult designed and adult led. That defeats the purpose of this grant and really kind of what we at YSA stand for. We really view youth as fully fledged partners, and youth as the ones who are in the driver's seat. We want them to be the ones that are taking the lead because they have brilliant, incredible ideas, and should have an equal seat at the table. Don't provide vague or brief responses to questions. That when reviewers are looking over the applications, they're not able to get a full picture of the work that you're trying to accomplish. So make sure that you are being detailed. Do not craft a budget that includes unallowable expenses. So again, unallowable expenses are things like expensive one-use items, hiring people to come and speak, things that are irrelevant to your project, and things that are, if you're going to do something like a canned food drive, you can't buy cans that will then be directly donated. Okay. Make sure that you do not submit an application for a project that takes place outside of the program timeline. So again, projects should take place within Global Youth Service Month, excuse me. Again, April 14th to May 14th, 2023. Again, it can take place on one day, or it can take place across multiple days within that time frame. Do not forget to check in with your project mentor and your sponsoring school or your sponsoring organization before submitting your application. They are great resources and can provide feedback. We encourage you to have your project mentor look over your application as well. I know even over here on my end, myself and my colleagues at YSA, we always have our peers read over our work to make sure that we're putting the best proposal forward when it comes to grant applications, or when it comes to even things like blogs or social media posts. Make sure that you are not applying for a grant for a program that's already in place at your sponsoring school or organization without explaining how you are making it yours. We understand that some organizations are specifically focused on hunger, and may have some type of project or initiative already in place. If you are supporting that initiative, that's fine, but let us know how you're making it yours and how you're really taking ownership of that piece. And then lastly, don't miss the January 16th deadline. We really want to make sure that we see your application. And if you miss the deadline, unfortunately, there's not really much that we're able to do. Okay. Don't want to leave on that note. So a few project planning resources that will be helpful as you are moving into the application process. So kind of broken them down into two separate pieces. Our general planning resources, all available at ysa.org/resources. These are the Kids in Action Toolkit, the Youth Changing the World Toolkit, and Classrooms with a Cause. The Kids in Action Toolkit is best suited for younger youth, whereas Youth Changing the World Toolkit is best suited for older youth and college age students, as well as Classrooms with a Cause for our college age students. And then we also have some hunger specific resources. This is on the Sodexo. This is on the grant landing page at ysa.org/Sodexo. We have a toolkit that's specifically about engaging a new generation of anti-hunger leaders. And then we also have partner toolkits and guides that are separated by those different project categories, whether it's gleaning and collecting surplus food, or it could be teaching others about government assistance programs and helping people access those benefits. All right, so I know we covered a lot and we are getting to the top of the hour. So I'm going to turn it over to you to see if you have any questions, and if you do, what those questions might be. And no question is too big or too small. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Feel free to use the raise hand function and hop off camera. You're also welcome to add your question into the chat box. I'll be monitoring both. Okay. So with that, again, please feel free to add this in as you're thinking, but I do have one final question for you all that I do want to share. And I want to know how you're feeling at this point in the application process. After participating in this training, are you likely to apply for this grant? Yes, no, unsure. And if you are a teacher, a staff member at an organization, or a parent, I won't, but I'm supporting a young person who will. So let us know kind of where you stand kind of right now after our session this evening. All right, we'll keep it open for about another 15 seconds. Okay, as you're doing that, one of the questions that came up is to confirm there should be at least 25 to 50 youth-aged volunteers involved in this project. Yes, that's correct. So if your young leaders are applying for a $250 grant, there should be at least 25 youth volunteers, and we consider youth up to and including 25 years old. And then for applications for our $500 grants, there should be at least 50 young people that are serving as volunteers. And again, volunteers can be those who are helping plan the project, serving in a leadership role, or participating day of. All right. So let's end this poll. So it looks like we have a bit of a mix, which is great. Hope to see applications from everyone or the young people in their lives. And I do want to say again, thank you so much for spending part of your evening with me. I know an hour in the middle of the week can be a lot. So again, I do appreciate it. A recording of this will be available in tomorrow evening's youth service briefing newsletter. I will also do my best to send a copy of this to you as someone who has registered and or attended this training. So please keep an eye out on your emails. I'll also hang around for a few more minutes if you do have any questions. But again, one last major thank you, both for attending and for being a passionate change maker or a caring adult for your community.